journey, and there are many, can we call it rasakatas, okay, down the line. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're now going to invite a gentleman who's going to share his experience as a banker. As a banker, his association with Mr. Dastakir. So, he's the former managing director of the Sampath Bank and also former CEO, director of Union Bank, and holding many positions in board of directors at many companies as well. So we're now going to invite Mr. Anil Amarasuriya on stage.
Let me first thank the board of directors of FMJ Holdings for inviting me to speak at this August Assembly. It's a privilege to be able to address all of you on the 50th anniversary of FMJ Holdings. My association with the late Mr. Dastakir started way back in the 70s and early 80s. By that time, I moved from my hometown in Gaul to Panadura, which was my mother's hometown, for education and employment. And Mr. Dastakir was a very well-known figure in Panadura because he was representing Singa Sri Lanka in Panadura. Having come back and joined Sampath Bank, we were very fortunate in early 1990 to canvass and win the account of FMJ Holdings, FMJ Plastics at that time. My colleague, Mr. Arvinda Pera, who is here with us, was also instrumental in meeting Mr. Dastakir and inviting him to bank with Sampath Bank. It was a success story from there onwards. An amazing story of a SME in a span of 50 years getting into a corporate status and becoming a holding company. Mr. Dastakir was a visionary and the leader in the initial years of FMG. In 1974, Mr. Dastakir has established FMJ Plastics, and by about 1980, he had moved his factory to his Mahagedara, which was in Keselwatha, Panadura. We used to visit his factory after work because both Aravinda and I lived in Panadura. We used to visit the factory on a so-called inspection, more so to try and get Mr. Dastakir to borrow some more money from the bank. It was never a case of asking him to repay. It was always a case of getting him to borrow money, but he being a very humble and a very careful businessman, never wanted to take undue risk. He always had his gearing in place and he always controlled it. So that was the hallmark of a successful SME entrepreneur. I hope the current SME industrialists take a leaf out of the success story of FMJ and try to emulate the FMJ story in their own businesses. Mr. Dastakir was a person who wanted to do it the right way. He paid attention to customer-centric services, to productivity, and even in the early years, his relationship with his employees was fantastic. he always showed empathy to his employees. I was happy to note the head of HR mentioning that same policies are followed even to this date. Mr. Dastakir expanded his operations and he started a polymer in the Modaravilla estate, and he was very fortunate and he had the wisdom to invite and to train his two children in the business. When we used to go and visit him, the children would be at home and he would quietly introduce them to the business and train them under his guidance. Unfortunately, we lost Mr. Dastakir in 2003. But by that time, A1 Polymer and FMJ Plastics has established themselves. I can remember Mr. Dastakir telling me, I have a lucrative order from a corporate, but I don't have the capacity. If I accept that order, I am going to deprive another SME of their supply of plastic bottles. That was his way. He was not greedy for business, but he was always loyal to his customers who had supported him by being with him and buying his products. His children has made him proud. Both the sons have continued the journey that the late father started, and they have continued to expand, and they have opened many companies. I can remember them starting a state-of-the-art factory by buying over the business that Mr. Hamdoon of Paratta was operating. They purchased that facility there and converted that into a state-of-the-art food-grade factory. They are currently concentrating on other areas as was depicted in the video that was shown, so I'm not going to go into the names, but they are into fashion and they are into the high-end branding, and I'm sure they will continue to prosper, and I wish them all success, the two sons and their children, the third gen who are introduced to this assembly, all success in taking FMJ Holdings on a journey, a very successful journey over the next 50 years. Thank you and all the best.
So even though we do not have Alhaj M.Y.A. Dastakir, the founder of FMJ Group in the land of living, we were fortunate to have Mr. Anil Amarasuriya, highlighting his character and definitely making us very well convinced that, he was a man of character, man of ethics, and definitely a role model that any businessman or woman should follow. We're now moving on to a person who is a veteran in the field of plastics, as we are about to invite him. He's a past president of the Plastics and Rubber Institute of Sri Lanka, former visiting lecturer in industrial chemistry to the University of Colombo and also the University of Peradeniya, former visiting lecturer in industrial engineering to the Department of Production Engineering to, production engineering in the University of Peradeniya. Undergone training in paints and synthetic resins at ICI factories in Australia, Malaysia, and also Singapore, opted to move into plastics manufacturing industry within the Sohail Captain group of companies, wide experience in all forms of plastic engineering. Executive Director of Austin Gloves in the Katunayaka Export Processing Zone, and also Minuangadu plant, a technical collaboration of the Captain Group and also Austin's Marmon of HK. So we'd like to now invite Mr. Anwar Dole on stage. Let's put our hands together and welcome Mr. Anwar Dole.
Members of the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished invitees, ladies and gentlemen, much of FMJ Holdings' interest revolves around plastics packaging and special polymers. So let us take a closer look at this industry. It is fashionable to lobby for banning all plastics, but is this practical? Banning single-use plastics makes sense. Certainly not all plastics. Why is plastics use so rampant? The answer is simple. It keeps food fresher for longer. It is light, thus reducing transport needs and carbon emissions. It protects the product, it packages, and it's durable. It is easy to print information onto, such as food labels and allergy information. It is watertight and fulfills health and safety requirements, keeping bleach and medicines, etc., safely stored. Of course, the negatives to plastics are no secret. It is often a non-biodegradable petroleum-driven product. Factor in toxins, wildlife endangerment, and difficult recycling, and the industry has a PR problem on its hands. But yet, plastics is a highly attractive material. Why? Because plastic manufacturing uses only 5% of the world's oil supplies. Further, the alternative materials aren't as cheap, versatile, or durable as plastic. Plastics is used across almost every sector: building and construction, in textiles, consumer products, transportation, telecommunication, plumbing industry, in cables, cords, wires, and even healthcare. Let us dig deeper and examine the facts. The per capita plastics consumption is, for Sri Lanka, approximately 6 kilograms per annum. In North America, it is a whopping 139 kilograms. In the United Kingdom, it's 31 kilograms. And what is the global average? 21 kilograms. Multiply this by each country's population, and a clearer picture emerges. Incidentally, North America accounts for 19% of global plastics production and 21% of consumption. So we all need to reduce, reuse, and recycle our plastics. Friends, we are gathered here today to celebrate 5 decades of the FMJ group of companies. And it is my privilege and pleasure to pay a tribute to the founder, the late Mr. Muhammad Yasin Ahmed Dastakir, who established FMJ Plastics way back in 1974, as all of you are well aware. This visionary leader also established A1 Polymer in the industrial zone in Modaravila, a factory specializing in the manufacture of pet items, in 1998. Mr. Yasin Dastakir expired in 2003, it has been mentioned earlier, but the void was quickly filled by his 2 able sons, Jauzi, and Jesme, who in 2006 commenced JD Polymer, a factory manufacturing large-scale containers and cans in Hirana, Panadura. In 2007, Jauzi and Jesme took a bold decision to venture into a new field. They commenced their own jewelry and gem cutting facility named Jewel Laurel. And around that time, they established Royal Lanka agencies, which soon became the sole retailer for several luxury brands. And the first was Raymond Weil. Other international brands were Mont Blanc, Baume & Mercier, Frederic Constant, and Alpina. They possess an in-house service center featuring internationally acclaimed technicians for repairing branded watches and writing instruments. The latest addition is Fine Brands, the online store. They have GMT, which carries fashion brand watches like Tommy Hilfiger, Kenneth Cole, Lacoste, Timberland, and Go Girl. Their clothing line includes United Colors of Benetton, Jockey, and Speedo. Other brands include Beckett and IT Luggage, with over 10 showrooms in Colombo and Kandy. In 2020, FMJ Holdings acquired Wingro Private Limited, a manufacturing plant in Ganemulla, Jayala. Well, they now hold 5 manufacturing plants with approximately 650 employees, and they're also in the hotel industry. The FMJ Holdings board comprises the 2 Dastakir brothers and their 2 sisters. And as we all know, the 3rd generation is just now entering the business. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, the Dastakirs are a very low-profile, humble family. But they have achieved much during the past 50 years. And therefore, I'm sure I'm not asking for too much to request all of you to please rise and give them a standing ovation. Please rise.